And the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Paul, is recognized.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. I imagine everybody agrees that the increase in the monetary base in this last year and a half is probably historic. I don't think we have much in our history to look back at as a precedent. So I would assume that we can't look back too easily and look at trying to solve a problem like this and what we have to do and how much the monetary base has to shrink. As we talk about this, I think most people assume that they're waiting for a signal from you when the balance sheet might shrink. But you know, even in the Depression, when it shrunk 16%, it wasn't done purposely. You know, it was the way the system was working back then. Can you give me a rather quick answer on this? Do you have any idea what percentage the base should shrink or might shrink, or is that something that you don't even want to address?
No, I think we would like to bring the balance sheet back to something consistent with where it was before the crisis, which means enough to accommodate Americans' demand for currency, plus a modest amount of reserves in the banking system, and that would suggest something under $1 trillion, I think, would be
$1 trillion?
Or less, yes.
Okay, of course, that would be very unprecedented. During the crisis that Paul Volcker had to deal with from '79 to '82, it was considered, you know, a major problem. The inflation got out of hand at 15%, and he had to come in and do something. And I guess the question is, how much did he have to shrink the balance sheet during those 3 years?
Well, not very much. He was focused on money growth in particular. So he wasn't clearly in a situation where we are now, where there are these large unused balances. I mean, I would point out that he was focused on M1 and M2 growth. M1 and M2 are not doing anything now. They're very flat. It's just the base, as you point out.
Well, excuse me, but the truth is during that time, which was considered very tight money, you know, the monetary base was still growing. During those 3 years, the monetary base grew 31%. So my suggestion is it might not be so easy, you know, to cut back, because even in the midst of an inflationary crisis like that, because maybe in 6 months or a year from now when you decide to do something, maybe there will be an increase in M1 and M2, and then it will be a different ballgame when you're dealing with this. But I have another question dealing with something you said on page 4 when you talk about one tool that you will have, because quite frankly, I think if we get into a situation where this housing crisis reemerges, which I believe it is going to be difficult for you to do what you say, because that's why you have been obviously hesitant to do anything. But you said one of your tools will be to pay interest on the balances, and that will cause banks to do different things and borrowers to do different things. And of course, I see that as a method of price fixing. In the early part of the last century, the free market economists said that socialism couldn't work. It wouldn't work, it would fail. And socialism and communism would fail because of pricing. And I assume that you would endorse this principle that wage and price controls isn't necessarily the best way to handle rising prices. Is that a safe assumption?
Absolutely.
Okay. My question and concern in economic policy is, isn't fixing interest rates in order to get the economy to do something a form of price fixing? The importance of prices in a free market is to tell the businessman and the consumer what to do. If the price is too high, they don't buy, and the businessman responds to supply and demand. Why is that not true in money? Money is 1/2 of every transaction. So if we're working on this false assumption that you're exempt from the market forces and you have some type of unique ability to say, interest rates are different. I know what is best. I know what they should be. They should be 0% for 15 months instead of 16 months. Why does that logic not apply to fixing interest rates?
Because if you believe that wages and prices are not perfectly flexible, and there are many that are not, then the economy can get pushed away from full employment, and as it obviously is today. And economists of all stripes, including Milton Friedman and others, agree that using monetary policy can be a useful tool to try to create growth and stability. In this particular case, low interest rates create more demand and can help bring the economy back to full employment. Now, obviously, there are limits to that, and we recognize those limits, but changing the interest rate is really just the other side of changing the quantity. Quantity and price are two sides of the same equation, as you know. So we can either change the quantity or we can change the price. By changing the price, we affect economic activity and try and achieve the objectives that Congress has given us.
Well, my fear is
Gentleman's
that
time is-
your results will be the same as wage and price controls.
Gentleman's time has expired.